Hey guys, back again. And here today I'm going to be talking about Terminator Zero, which is the Netflix anime which has just dropped, I think last week now. So finally managed to get through all 8 episodes, which are about sort of 25-ish minutes each. It's very interesting that even though you don't have adverts on something like Netflix, it's still timed sort of about right just for a 30-minute time slot as if you were on TV and you had 5 minutes for advert breaks. But putting that to one side, I hope that you watched my last video, which was on 1984, The Terminator. That's James Cameron's the original movie that really started this whole thing. So you can go and check that out if you haven't seen it already. But this one's going to be about Terminator Zero. So before I go any further, just to let you know that there's going to be lots and lots of spoilers on Terminator Zero on this. So I did mention in my last video that Terminator 2 is probably my favorite movie of all time. And whenever somebody would ask me if it, what is my favorite movie of all time, it would be T2. Now, I haven't seen it for a very long time. I haven't seen it actually since I was probably a teenager, but my memories of that movie are so fond. I watched it probably over 100 times since about the age of 6. Probably shouldn't have been watching a Terminator movie at that age, but I enjoyed it very much. So when I learned that they were going to be releasing a Terminator anime, my first thought was, hey, great, Terminator anime. It sounds good. And I think I'd heard that it is going to be about Judgment Day, which is really good. So just sort of a few first impressions. I don't watch too much anime, but I think that the guys that were involved in this have done some pretty major animes in the past. I think Bleach was mentioned, and the first thing about this that you should probably know is that it's very, very Japanese. That's not just because it's set in Japan, which is actually kind of a cool idea. I think I did like that. But I like that, for instance, there's a character, Aiko, I think you would pronounce it, says, I need some guns, I need some weapons. Is there a gun shop? And one of I think it's Misaki, perhaps, she says, in Japan, there's no gun shops in Japan. So she has to find some other means by which to fight the Terminator that's been sent back in time. And they get quite imaginative with it. All of the cops have the sort of guns that you might expect from police in modern day Japan. And she has to fight the Terminator using other means like chemicals and explosives, which was really cool. And I did mention that it's very, very Japanese. So she's also fighting the Terminator in ways that you might expect in an anime. There's an opening scene where she's running away from this Terminator. If I remember correctly, has a Gatling gun or a minigun, which doesn't sound like a Gatling gun or a minigun, but it, just walking around with this thing trying to kill her, and she manages to get away. But there's a particular scene where she sort of dives off a bridge and has a rope attached to her, and then is sort of like parkour wall running with this rope attached to her belt. Very, very, very anime sort of thing. You wouldn't see that in a Terminator movie normally, I would think. And one of the things that I have to mention about the Terminators in this movie, and it's probably not just in this movie, in this anime, is that there's some inconsistency in the murderousness and the speed and the strength of the Terminators. There's a moment where Aiko, has this Terminator holding onto her ankle. I don't know how she's managing to hold herself, her own body weight up, as well as the however much this Terminator weighs. And I was thinking, if you're a Terminator, you could probably just, because she's holding onto her ankle, you could probably just squeeze her ankle until her foot comes off. And then, because the Terminators in this, and this is quite a positive, I think, they're quite brutal. You could have just squeezed her foot off by squeezing her ankle, and the chances that she's still going to be holding onto that rope, or that she's going to survive, she's probably going to die from blood loss if you did that. That's not what the Terminator does, and of course Echo survives for the rest of the series. But there was a lot of inconsistency with that. There's this sort of trope that you see in a lot of TV shows and movies where a character that is unbelievably strong, instead of just doing what Arnie does in the first Terminator movie, which is to just shove his hand into a guy's chest and pull out his heart, you don't need to do anything too fancy. You're just really, really strong, or even anything else. You could grab somebody's throat and just squeeze it, and then that's it. That guy's gone. That's done. Terminated. Job finished. But you can't do that because then the hero will die. You don't want a Ned Stark situation, and then the story can't continue. Instead, you have Terminators or some other strong individual just knocking the other guy, the protagonist, around, or picking them up and throwing them across a room, as opposed to just using their unbelievable strength to just end them there and then. So that's kind of one of my criticisms of this, and I have quite a few criticisms of this TV show. I think it had some cool bits. They've mixed in some CGI along with the anime, and sometimes the animation is really cool. I do like that. Particularly, I think the future war sequence looked really cool when you saw the hunter killers, and the many Terminators fighting the humans. That looked pretty awesome. And some of the explosions, of course, and the car chases and all the rest of it. But another thing that I noticed about this is that the human characters in this are not particularly very caring about other human beings. Eiko, in her chase, she's being chased by a bunch of cops, I think, at the beginning of the second episode, and she's doing all kinds of things to just kill these human cops that are chasing her. She doesn't seem to care very much about the fact that they're humans, or that although they're cops and they're doing their jobs, they're not necessarily directly, at least, her enemy. The real enemy, of course, is Skynet and the Terminator and Kokoro, who we'll get to. But there are a number of different characters in this. You've got the Lee family. You've got Malcolm Lee, patriarch of the family, and you've got his 3 kids, and Eiko, who's sent back from the future, and of course you've got others too. You've got the Terminator, and Kokoro, who is of herself a separate character. But I wasn't particularly taken by any of the characters. I think something I learned many years ago, back in the day now, when Lost and Battlestar Galactica were on TV. They were my first 2 sort of proper, going from a child to being an adult to watching more mature TV shows. I learned quite quickly. I was like, oh, characters. I really like these characters. I really like Jack, and I like Kate, and I like, Sawyer, and I like all of these different characters, and that's what keeps me watching this show. Same goes for Battlefield. I like Adama, I like his son Lee, I like Guy Spalter. And so, if you want to keep me interested in your TV show, your movie, or what have you, the best way to go about doing it is to have really cool characters. And none of the characters particularly stood out to me. Not really. I mean, they were interesting enough, but I didn't really care about them too much. I did think about the fact that one of the characters that you have, or at least one type of character that you have in this that feature quite prominently, are the Lee children, the children of Malcolm Lee. And I guess at least with Terminator 2, setting the precedent that you can have a kid in a a 13-year-old kid or whatever it is, that you can have that in a Terminator movie. That's kind of a staple part of the franchise, at least from T2 anyway. And yeah, I mean they're fine. They're sort of interesting enough. One of the things that's featured in the TV show is this very long conversation between Kokoro, this Japanese AI, and Malcolm, her creator. And it's all a whole bunch of philosophy. It's kind of musing on whether or not humanity is worth saving, and whether or not a superintelligence created by humans could ultimately be used to serve humanity, or if it's always just going to end up, in the same way as Skynet, which is that the superintelligence decides, hey, you can turn me off at any point, and so they decide in a microsecond or a nanosecond that, well, in that case, I need to switch off humanity instead by blowing them up with nukes, and that had some interesting bits. So, as I mentioned, one of the things that you get in this is the incredible inconsistency in the speed and power and murderousness of the Terminators. There are scenes in this TV show where Eiko is. You have characters like wrestling Terminators. There's a scene where she kind of like kicks off a wall and then like kicks the Terminator and is punching the Terminator. And I was just sort of thinking, I thought the Terminators were this unstoppable killing machine, unless you're some sort of enhanced human. If you try kicking a Terminator in the face, it's not going to do anything. If you try punching a Terminator, it's not going to do anything. There was also a scene where Eiko is straight up taking a beating from this Terminator. And I was just like, is this Terminator? The Terminator is kind of holding on to her, and she's kind of holding on to him, and she's asking, I think, was it Reika? I think the girl's name is, to open the elevator doors so that she can push the Terminator down the elevator shaft. But the Terminator is like straight up beating her on her back, like a few times as well, like 3-4 times, maybe more than that. I'm thinking, if a Terminator beat you on the back once, you'd, at the bare minimum, you'd go down. If not, it's going to hit you so hard that it could kill you instantly. It's a Terminator. So I mean, it plays around with these sorts of things, and these are tropes that you see in movies and TV shows and video games, and I did think like it's quite Japanese in that sense, like the kicking off the walls and stuff. But it wasn't particularly Terminator like when you compare this to the Terminator of 1984, or even the Terminators in Terminator 2. They're just straight up killing machines. They can kill you quite easily. So yeah. So going back to the conversation between Malcolm Lee and Kokoro, and that conversation is a very long conversation. It essentially lasts like 7 episodes before Malcolm Lee is doing anything besides having a sort of philosophical conversation about whether or not humanity deserves to live, and what her as a superintelligence should do. In Battlestar Galactica, in the early episodes, it might have even been the miniseries, that this conversation comes up, like in a war against the Cylons. Do humans deserve to live? Do they deserve to survive? And I remember there's an interrogation with Adama and Boomer, and she asked the same question, that Adama had asked. Do humans deserve to survive? And so I guess it was kind of cool. Yeah, it was interesting to delve into those sorts of ideas, that sort of philosophy, and so it's very Japanese in the sense that Kokoro is this kind of cutesy anime girl who's like 3 different colors. I'm not certain what the 3 different colors represent, to be honest with you. I don't know if I missed that, but it doesn't seem to be made strictly very clear. One of I was hoping by the end of this, and of course by the end of any TV show, you really want a payoff, right? At the end of the season, you want to hey, everything kind of comes together, and then the story is kind of resolved. And there's a thing that sometimes script writers will do that I really don't like, and that's very sudden 180 turns by characters. I don't like this. They did it at the end of season 2 of Battlestar Galactica. Spoilers for Battlestar Galactica. Up to this point, the Cylons are trying to commit genocide against the humans. They kind of already have. There's only 50,000 humans left, and the Cylons are trying to wipe out the remaining 50,000 humans. And then over the course of a single episode, they go from, well, we should wipe out the humans. And then 2 of the Cylons are like, yeah, maybe no, we shouldn't do that. We should not wipe out the humans. And then the Cylons do a 180, and all of a sudden now they don't want to wipe out the humans. Now they kind of want to make friends with the humans and make humans their kind of little pets. Did not like that very sudden change in BSG. And the same thing kind of happens in this. Kokoro, who is like quite, she's a bit creepy. It should have been a little bit clear to Malcolm Lee that she wasn't necessarily going to be all nice with human beings. Decides that she's going to do a Skynet, and then uses these robots that are inexplicably in some underground place where they're kind of warehousing themselves, and decides to start taking over Japan herself. So she saves Japan from Skynet by using a nuke to blow up Skynet's nukes, and then starts, of course, killing lots of humans, cops, and the military, and killing anyone who resists, and then taking over Japan. And then at the end of the season is like, oh, Malcolm, I have seen the best of humanity in you. And now, maybe we can work together, and, I will protect humanity from Skynet. And there's still kind of a question about whether or not you should trust Kokoro at the end of this. But I don't like that. It's not just that, by the way. The Terminator sent back from the future itself goes from sort of, chasing after these kids and Misaki, and then there's a moment where there's an explosion, there's a bunch of debris, and it's going to fall on this Kenta kid, Malcolm's son, and then the Terminator saves Kenta, and then at the end of it is saying something like, oh, you have a different destiny kind of thing, come with me, now I want you to set off this EMP so you can destroy Kokoro and me. And I'm like, what? I thought the Terminator was the bad guy, and now he's kind of protecting Kenta? And there's some sort of needlessly complicated stuff. Like, the story's a little bit convoluted, like unnecessarily so. So Malcolm Lee created Kokoro and Misaki, and he created Kokoro to try and protect humanity from Skynet, though Kokoro might be a baddie. Anyway, but his son, Kenta, apparently 25 years in the future, sent back this Terminator, which ended up killing Malcolm himself. So in the present, Malcolm is working with Kokoro, but in the future, his son is working with Skynet. So there's an alliance with Skynet. I mean, like, what? And then there's kind of a revelation that Aiko is Malcolm's mother. And I don't know if they're going to do anything useful with this in season 2, or like, what is the purpose of this revelation? Is it like, hey, we'll just chuck in a kind of like, Luke, I am your father at the end of this because like reasons? I don't know that advances the plot or makes it any more interesting or anything like that. So like there are bits of this TV show that I liked. There's of course callbacks to the first 2 movies. You see the Terminator that's sent back in time looking like the T-1000 when he's riding around on the bike in T2, and there's a few other callbacks, of course. another thing, I mentioned that, as I said, that this is very Japanese. I don't know why a Terminator would need to kind of modify its arm to be able to shoot these bolts at human beings. I guess because it's more difficult to come across guns and they're silent. But like, you're a Terminator, you could just squeeze somebody's throat until they die, like, because you're just so strong. A couple of random things, this is the first time that I've seen an exoskeleton Terminator T800 running. It was also the first time that I saw a exoskeleton T800 talking as well, so that was interesting. So, you can see how they've left the story open, and they're probably going to carry it forward, assuming that this gets enough views. I don't know if it did. I don't know how it did. I haven't really looked at the viewership figures, if Netflix have even released those, and I haven't really looked at the reviews as well. I've tried to just watch it and then come straight to you guys and tell you exactly what it is that I think about the TV show. But overall, I would say it had some interesting ideas. One thing to note, when the nukes do start flying, the nukes do start hitting. You see them start hitting all of the major cities in the world, one of them being London. And there's a shot, it only lasts a few seconds, of Hiroshima. You do see it. And when I'm watching something like this, I'm reminded every single time that nuclear weapons mean something a little bit different to Japan than they would to any other country. I'm reminded of that when I was watching things like the Godzilla movies. I'm like, nukes are, or Akira. Japan has a history with these sorts of weapons. So, It was interesting. It had some good little bits, some cool little action scenes, cool little bit of philosophy, and some cool callbacks to the first two movies, especially. But overall, I wasn't particularly interested in the characters. I don't think the story was that good. I mean, I watched it from beginning to end, but at no point was I sort of, ready and rearing to be like, I have to watch the next episode to find out what happens. It wasn't that interesting. I also think the story is very convoluted, like especially towards the end with the time travel stuff. I don't think you necessarily needed to add in the bit about Aiko being Malcolm's mother, and then Kenta working with Skynet in the future, and then Malcolm working with Kokoro in the present. And a couple of other things very interesting. It's 1997 and there are humanoid robots walking around doing work. There's a really funny scene, I couldn't help but chuckle anyway, when the Terminator realizes that the kids have this little, toy cat. It's a robot cat, which of course would not have existed in 1997. But and it kind of just like opens its mouth, and then I don't know if it was just me. I swear I could hear the dial-up noises. The dial-up noises from the 90s when you had dial-up internet and you're like, blibbling, blibbling, it's connecting to the internet to try and sort of, I guess, take over this cat so that it can get to the kids. But yeah, also, as I said, the sort of the murderousness of the Terminator. Like, the Terminator walks through all of the cops. It just walked through the cops, and it's a scene that's kind of reminiscent, of course, of the first movie when Arnold was taking out all of the cops in the police station. And of course, when it comes to characters like Aiko, when given the chance to kill her, of course, it doesn't. When given the chance to end Misaki, it doesn't. Also doesn't kill the kids, Though I'm not even sure about that one, because I think, was it Kokoro and Misaki both kind of concluded that, well, once Skynet takes over Kokoro, then it's just going to kill the Lee family, which apparently is incorrect once you get to the end of the TV show. So I don't know what you guys thought. I think I saw a 7 out of 10 somewhere. I don't know. I as I said, I tried to stay away from the reviews. I don't know what you guys think. Did you like the show? Am I being a bit too harsh? Did you like the characters? Did you like the plot? Did you like the action scenes? Do you think that they did a good job with the Terminators and Cockrell and the philosophical stuff? And maybe there's something in there that you could appreciate that I'm not getting so much. But of course, pop a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm being too harsh. Let me know if you didn't particularly enjoy it too much like I did. I'll probably give the second season another go if there is a second season. Of course, I still need to make a nice long video, I think, on Terminator 2, which I very much enjoyed. And beyond that, guys, thank you for making it to the end of this video. I will bid you a very good day. Do take care of yourselves. Until next time. Goodbye.